under the pressure of development and territorial expansion. From the late 18th to the 19th century, waves of white settlers from the eastern coast of the United States began moving westward. They followed trails such as the Oregon Trail and the Santa Fe Trail, seeking new opportunities in the fertile, yet unexplored lands. Wagon trains stretched in long lines, carrying families, tools, and livestock as they gradually advanced into the territories of Native American tribes. The emergence of settlements quickly transformed the landscape of the North American plains. The traditional hunting grounds of Native Americans were divided by farms, villages, and later, railroads. Forests were cut down for lumber to build houses, while grasslands were converted into fields of corn and wheat. Rivers that once served as vital water sources for indigenous peoples were now controlled by newly established towns. Moreover, the expansion of white settlers had a direct impact on one of the most vital resources for Native Americans, the bison. Particularly bison. For tribes such as the Comanche, Sioux, and Cheyenne, this type of buffalo was not only a source of food but also provided hides, bones, and many other essential materials. However, with the arrival of white settlers, the bison were relentlessly hunted. Many settlers saw them as obstacles to agriculture and livestock farming. Additionally, the U.S. military encouraged the mass slaughter of this buffalo to destroy the primary resource of Native Americans, forcing them to abandon their nomadic way of life. Within just a few decades, millions of buffalo were wiped out, pushing many tribes into desperate conditions. At this time, many tribes were pushed back, weakened, or forced to sign land cession treaties with the U.S. government. However, not all tribes succumbed. The Comanche, the proud mounted warriors of the plains, chose the path of resistance. They refused to give up their territory and instead responded with a series of bloody raids, making the westward expansion of white settlers a brutal conflict that lasted for decades. The Comanche were not only skilled warriors, but they were also known as masters of guerrilla warfare. From a young age, Comanche boys were taught that horses were not just a means of transportation, but the very breath and strength of their tribe. As soon as they could walk, they were placed on horseback, initially sitting on the backs of their mothers or fathers to get accustomed to the rhythm of movement. By the age of 3 or 4, they began riding on their own, starting with docile horses, but over time, they learned to control wilder ones. As they grew older, the boys were trained to ride without saddles, using only their knees and body weight to control the horse, maintaining balance even at full gallop. They learned how to shoot arrows while riding, and could even hold on tightly to the horse's back, leaning down close to its side to avoid attacks, while still being able to accurately shoot arrows at their enemies or prey. The training took place not only on bright, sunny days but also in the rain, strong winds, and even at night. A true Comanche warrior had to be able to ride in all conditions, moving swiftly across the plains, crossing rivers, or hiding behind hills for ambushes. Games were also designed to help them develop their skills. Boys would race to grab objects from the ground while riding at full speed or compete to see who could jump from one horse to another without falling. By the age of 10 to 12, boys could join their first bison hunts with the adults. They learned how to surround the herd, charge in without getting trampled, and use each arrow effectively. By their teenage years, many had become such skilled riders that they could fight just like grown warriors. Therefore, it is no surprise that the Comanche are considered to be one of the greatest horsemen in American history. They didn't just ride horses, they were born and raised with them, making them an inseparable part of their nation's spirit. They could ride for hours without rest, allowing them to launch sudden raids into enemy territory and then vanish into the vast plains before the army could respond. Comanche attacks often took place at night under the moonlight or at dawn, the moments when their enemies were most vulnerable and the moon guided their warriors. White settlements became main targets. The Comanche warriors would charge in at terrifying speed, unleashing war cries to announce their arrival. They fought with bows and arrows, spears, rifles taken from traders or the military, and sometimes even tomahawks, a type of handheld axe used by Native American tribes. Settlers, unprepared for guerrilla warfare, often fell into panic as the Comanche horsemen swept in like a storm from the horizon. Many battles became legendary, In the 1830s and 1840s, Comanche raids into Texas and Mexico occurred with terrifying intensity. One of the fiercest was the Linnville Raid of 1840, when hundreds of Comanche warriors stormed the town of Linnville, Texas, leaving destruction in their wake. They looted, burned homes, stole livestock, and kidnapped women and children. The survivors could only flee to the sea, trying to escape on small boats. This attack sent shockwaves through the white settlers, forcing the Texas government to mobilize the military in retaliation. Not long ago, the Comanche were just a small tribe living off hunting and gathering, with dogs pulling wooden sleds as their means of transportation. But then, they acquired horses through raiding and trade, powerful creatures brought to the continent by the Spanish. They witnessed the power of the Spanish cavalry using horses and were amazed by the speed and strength of these animals. However, it didn't take long before they too learned to hunt, tame, and ride horses. From then on, everything changed. Buffalo hunts became much easier. In just a few minutes, a group of hunters could chase down an entire herd of bison, taking down the prey with bows and spears without the need for hours of stalking. The meat, skin and bones of these giant creatures provided an abundance of food and resources like never before. Military power also changed. In the past, battles often relied on crude weapons. But now, the Comanche could strike as fast as the wind, appearing suddenly and retreating to the plains before the enemy could react. They became master horsemen, making the horse an inseparable part of their culture and military strength. On a May morning in 1836, a group of Comanche warriors suddenly attacked the Parker Fort in Texas. Shouts rang out, guns fired, and blood spilled on the ground. When the battle ended, many members of the Parker family were killed, and some were taken captive, including a 9-year-old girl, Cynthia Ann Parker. Initially, Cynthia Ann was a captive, but it didn't take long before she adapted to her new life. The Comanche tribe not only cared for her but also welcomed her as a true member. She learned to speak Comanche, rode horses as if the wind itself were sweeping across the plains, hunted, and participated in all the tribe's activities. Over the years, she completely forgot her old world and became a Comanche as if she had been born into the tribe. She married Peta Nakona, a powerful and respected chief. Their marriage was not just a union between two people, but also a symbol of complete integration into the Comanche world. Their love blossomed amidst battles and seasonal migrations. And from that union, Cynthia Ann gave birth to 3 children, including Quanah Parker, who would later become one of the last great leaders of the Comanche people. However, fate did not allow her to live in peace. In 1860, during a U.S. Army attack on a Comanche camp at Pease River, Cynthia Ann was captured. When the soldiers saw her, a white woman with hair braided in the Comanche style, sun-tanned skin, and a proud gaze, they realized she was the child who had gone missing nearly 25 years earlier. News of the white woman who had been kidnapped spread quickly. Her former family rejoiced in her return, but for Cynthia Ann, it was a nightmare. She had lost her husband, her children, her tribe. She had lost the very person she had become. The white people around her tried to help her readjust to her old life, but it only caused her more suffering. She no longer spoke English fluently, was unfamiliar with wearing long dresses, or living in permanent houses. She wanted only one thing: to return to the Comanche, to the vast plains, and to her true family. But that never happened. Separated from her loved ones and unable to adjust to her new life, Cynthia Ann fell into despair. Her death in 1871, just over a decade after being captured, is believed to have been caused by grief, a deep sorrow from being torn away from what she held most dear. The development of industrial civilization accelerated the pace of westward expansion, causing the Comanche's traditional hunting grounds to shrink. The struggle for survival became more intense as the U.S. military began carrying out suppression campaigns. The collapse of the Comanche was not only caused by pressure from the military but also by the extinction of the bison, their primary source of livelihood. In the 1870s, the U.S. Army sent General Ronald S. Mackenzie to quash the Comanche resistance. The Red River War, 1874 to 1875, marked the final stage of the Comanche's independence. Isolated, lacking food, and overwhelmed by modern weaponry, They were forced to surrender and move to a reservation in Oklahoma, ending an era of the legendary mounted warriors. From the mighty nomadic warriors of the plains to their inevitable downfall against industrial civilization. The story of the Comanche is a captivating historical tragedy. They fought fiercely against their fate, yet ultimately could not overcome the tide of time and the rise of modern America. Despite their defeat, their warrior spirit lives on in legend and history, becoming a symbol of resilience and courage.